Morning, folks. It seems like we have another content creator circle jerk forming in the YouTube ecosphere for Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. A few days ago, Gerbil had posted a video discussing the likelihood of pirate fleets coming to the game in the next era. And like a school kid coming back for seconds after their first time playing 7 Minutes in Heaven, Scrybe jumped on the bandwagon talking about what he thought in terms of what Gerbil thought. So, being a follower and somebody that just likes to jump on things that are fun, or maybe somebody that couldn't sleep tonight and it just happens to be 3 in the morning and I don't know what to do with my time, I am here to discuss what I feel about what Scribe feels about what Gerbil feels. And honestly, if we have to think about this, and if some of you are rolling your eyes and going, "Oh, not this stupid convoluted podcast again," I want to say that anytime that I can talk about the economics of this game, I am going to do it because for some reason it is the most fun thing for me, and that is kind of sad. So let's jump into it. Now, before we do this, I do want to stress that I'm not going to make you sit through a 40-minute video about what I think, about what Scribe thinks, about what Gerbil thinks, so that Fat Phil can discuss what I'm thinking and Rabbit Beaver can deal with what he is thinking, and we can all deal with some sort of tongue twister. We are going to just jump to a couple of points, and I will talk about those and kind of the overarching theme. Essentially, Gerbil believes that the next era in the game is going to be pirate fleets, and that next era we should be finding out about next week. And obviously, Scribe does not think those things, and I will get into what I think and why I think those things. So let's pop in and see what's going on.
For CG, I don't.
I
No,
mean,
I don't
look,
see it happening.
they charge us anywhere from $100 to $300 per character release as a marquee to start playing it, within the first week. Yeah, if we can normalize that, then they can normalize gating a capital ship behind a Galactic Legend, especially since capital ships are where most players get the bulk of their crystal income through Fleet Arena.
Yeah, he's absolutely right about that. Fleet Arena is very, very important to maintain top of Fleet Arena if you want to try and advance your roster really quickly. We all want those 400 crystals a day, absolutely no doubt about it. But unless this fleet were to completely hardgate anybody and everybody from getting first, unless you happen to have it, nobody's gonna just go balls to the wall crazy outside of the really, really big whales like myself and all of the top end TW guilds and anybody that cares about GAC in a massive, massive way. That being said, it's still a massive barrier to entry, and they don't want people to be waiting. They want people to hit it now and straight.
Yeah, so this is where we start to talk about the economy of the game and we talk about normalizing the pricing of characters, right? And the $100 versus the $300. And I think that one thing that CG has actually done really, really well in the last year to 2 years is kind of bring those prices down. Yes, I know like $100 to 100. I think it's about $100 to $150 as long as you're not doing a day one whale like some people that I know. Um, but that is a considerable drop down from the 330 that we were seeing a very long time ago. And I did do a video about this pretty, I don't want to say it was recently, maybe about 6 to 8 months ago. It was called Egnards Lemonade Stand, and it was talking about how CG was looking to capitalize on more of a casual audience or on the audience that wasn't willing to spend a large amount of money. Essentially, what they've done is instead of saying, hey, you have to get 7 stars, or it's not worth doing, and we only care about the whale money, we're going to put all of these different, not gates, it's almost like the opposite of gates, carrots in front of you, so that if you are somebody that wants to get 4 stars, it's still worth it. If you are somebody that wants to get to 5 stars, it's still worth it. If you are somebody that wants to get to 6 stars, it is still worth it. And we've seen that with era battles. We saw that with the latest round of bonus drops, which I know kind of sucked outside of the impulse detectors. But effectively, CG has been dropping prices pretty significantly across the board. Do whale packs still exist? Yes, they do, because whale's going to whale, kraken's going to kraken, and the largest spenders in this game are always going to spend an inordinate amount of money. But CG has started to realize that monetization trends have shifted considerably in the last few years for the sector in general, and they are looking to build a base that is sending them $20 to $30 a month, but a larger base of players, rather than just having 10 to 20 players sending them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month. Now, the other point that Gerbil does make here is that most of us do get our crystal income from fleets, and we see, right, Scrybe agrees with that, and we don't really touch on it enough, I think. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there was this common theme in the game that your crystal income, you kind of just saved only for refreshes. You didn't use it on character packs. You didn't use it on store packs. You didn't use it on anything else. There really wasn't anything that was worth it for the casual player, the highly engaged but not high spending player. So players were building up really, really high stockpiles of crystals. Uh, and CG was always looking for ways to bring that down. Now, we've seen that change a lot recently, and I've done a lot of valuations on a lot of different packs that have come to the game. Some of them that did just cost crystals, but because the era system has really allowed and prioritized the ability for players to get to 5 stars or 5.5, 6 stars and still get something out of their characters, we've also seen a huge number of players who never would have bought character packs several years ago who are currently doing that, which means that there are a lot more crystals coming out of the system. Uh, I don't want to say than there are going in, because that doesn't make sense, but there are a lot more crystals going out of the system than there were crystals going out of the system in previous generations of the game. Now, Gerbil is going to go on here to talk about the different pirates. He is going to go on to talk about why he thinks all of this makes sense and why all of these ships make sense. And I don't want to belittle or diminish what he is saying here, because he's right. Right, we do need more fleets in the game. We do need more ships in the game. There are opportunities for pirate ships in the game. However, I do think it is a little bit too early on at this point. We talk about being able to normalize the cash flow and spending of money and gating things, but the reality is we only have to look as far back as Ahsoka, which was incredibly expensive, and Ahsoka's adoption rate in .gg was actually very, very small. And the same thing for Lord Vader, who was an inordinately expensive GL in his time. Up until his Lightspeed bundles came to the game, we saw a really small adoption rate on him as well. Now, if you were in Kyber 2 or Kyber 1, you probably didn't notice these things because everybody in those divisions had it, but that does make up a relatively small part of the player base. If we start to see pirate ships coming to the game for characters that the majority of players do not have and aren't going to get anytime near soon, um, we're going to see a fleet that only the biggest spenders and only the absolute most engaged players are going to work towards. And that isn't really a profitable endeavor. Additionally, when it comes to ships in terms of an entire era and spending money as players, I think that a lot of players would see a ship era as incredibly player friendly. Now, again, I said a ship era, not a pirate ship era. If CG were to give us an entire era with 5 to 6 ships, that means that there is a 3-month period where we don't have to Zeta anything. We don't have to Omicron anything. we don't have to relic anything that we weren't already going to be relicking for the raid. And that is a period of time that I don't think CG wants to give us. On top of the fact that it leads right into the holiday episode that happens. Seems weird to say holiday episode, but why didn't they just call it the holiday special? Um, it seems strange to give us that leading into an era where there are going to be no marquees, right? So we're actually talking about 4 months where players are going to be able to stockpile Omicrons, they're going to be able to stockpile Zetas, they're going to be able to stockpile gear. And I know that you're thinking right now, well, then they'll have to do the pirates that they're not already doing. You're right. But the reality is that the people who are going to do the pirates are already in the process of doing the pirates. It's just going to take them longer and a little bit too long when it comes to doing the pirates and the ships and hoping to get the pirate GL ship. I just don't think that the monetization that Gerbil thinks is there is actually there, at least not right now. I do want to jump backwards, actually.
I think it's far more likely we get Force Awakens era that ends up in an epic confrontation for Snoke or something like that.
No, haha.
Yeah, so I said this actually on Zeta Protocol with Pico Burrito last week on Labor Day when he gave me a ton of homework, like 3 hours before we started filming, and he said, "Hey, Egnards, this would be really fun if you put together this list." I do strongly believe that Snoke is going to be the next Journey or Epic Confrontation character. It is the 10-year anniversary of The Force Awakens. CG has pretty heavily signaled that they like to jump on those anniversaries, and honestly, it probably is a not Lucasfilms, LucasArts Disney thing that they try to push that content to the players in order to tie it into the things that are going on in the Star Wars ecosphere outside of the game itself. Now, I don't really particularly like Snoke. I would love a world in which we never get Snoke in this game ever, but I do recognize that even though he is the most anticlimactic villain to ever come to a video game, not video game, into a movie, the most anticlimactic video game villain would probably be Yu Yevon from Final Fantasy X. But even though he is the most anticlimactic character who lost all of his potential when Rain Johnson decided to YOLO and screw him over in The Last Jedi, he is a significant part of that sequel franchise. Now, what I think is going to happen, and I'm going to say that this is not an area of characters where I can just rattle off names, is that we are likely to see Resistance and First Order characters leading into Snoke, with Resistance characters potentially being teamed to go with Rey in a way that fundamentally changes the Rey team. That is to say, not makes it stronger or weaker, but makes it more likely that she is going to be utilized with other Resistance characters, kind of like Lord Vader and his 4 clones. And then First Order troopers, characters that are not intended to go with Supreme Leader Kylo Ren and are instead hard gated to be working with Snoke, something that maybe has an anti-GL synergy or maybe has an anti-Kylo Ren synergy. So that is definitely where I think that the next era is going. Now, there is something else in this video that I do want to point out. Let's go over.
What's coming. So I guess we'll all be pleasantly surprised, or maybe I'll be going, I told you so in a week and a half, which is what I'm hoping to do. Otherwise, folks, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Please smash that like and subscribe. Pretty
Definitely.
please. Less
Gerbil's doing my job for me. Thank you so much. But do make sure you give him a like and
than a
subscribe.
fourth of you who watch my channel are actually subscribed.
Okay. So, real talk. I think what he's saying does have a little bit of legs, a little bit of relevance. Absolutely. I think he's clinging a little bit too heavily onto the terminologies used inside of the descriptions. Like I said, my big bone of contention is using the word.
I just want to point out that Yeah, and yes, I'm taking this time just to say this. And in fact, we'll go back just a little bit so that we can hear it again.
A little bit of legs, a little bit of relevance. Absolutely. I think he's clinging a little bit too heavily onto the terminologies used inside of the descriptions. Like I said, my big bone of contention is
One more time.
used inside of the descriptions. Like I said, my big bone of contention is using.
What is a boner of contention, Scribe? Please tell me. What is a boner of contention?
The word crew around pirates is just this kind of synonymous, right? A pirate and his crew, that's just kind of synonymous language. And yeah, you could talk about, the name of the short stories where these characters feature, and there's like, it talks about a ship, the Crimson Corsair.
All right, where I actually end it right here because Scribe says a lot of beautiful things in his very Welsh accent, and I love it. And I would listen to him literally all day talking. Um, I do want to remind everybody, though, that this is the man that we are following right now, Wooly Willy from the 90s. Come on, Scribe, let's go. But with that all said, here's the reality when it comes to ships. And I've been saying this for over a year now. CG has no idea what to do with ships at this point. That is why Punishing One came to the game. It was them buying themselves time to figure out how fleets are going to work going forward. When we've had the escalation of Executor taking out a capital ship to um, to the profundity, disappearing a capital ship and not running away, and to Leviathan and taking over a capital ship. CG just has not figured out how they can top that to make a new fleet new and exciting and interesting. I think that Punishing One signals that we are going to be getting the Fonder Hallcraft in the near-ish future as a lifter for Profundity, and probably a lifter for Leviathan after that once it has died from relevance, in order to give them 2 to 3 years. If we look at last year, 2024, now we're only talking about marquee level ships right now, but if we were to look at 2024, we saw Punishing One in October. We saw Comeuppance in January, right? That is a huge shift in terms of what we're seeing in the game. The year previous to that, when we got Leviathan, we got Mark 6 and TIE Dagger around June, and the TIE Defender again in January. They have told us, hey, we're not interested in releasing a ton of new ships at once because it's not working for us. Now, if you're curious, the year previous to that, we saw Raven's Claw in July, and we saw TIE Echelon and Star Fortress both in March as lifters for the First Order and for the Resistance fleet. I don't see a world in which we're getting 5 to 6 new ships on top of giving us a GL level ship on top, especially if it's gated behind Hondo, because while I'm going to have Hondo in 2 to 3 months, he is an incredibly expensive GL with the R9s and the R8s needed. I believe, if I remember correctly, that just on materials alone, it sets him down as the second most expensive GL. That is not really a situation you want to put yourself in if you want to have a highly profitable new thing. I think that CG is in a position where the next fleet thing we see, the next big addition to fleets that we see, is probably going to be something new. And when is that going to be? I don't know. 2 years, 3 years. Hopefully, we get territory wars stuff before that, if I'm completely honest. But I do think Fonder Hallcraft at some point in the next 6 months, probably followed by a Leviathan thing in the next year and a half. Now, is it possible that we see a pirate fleet in the future, contrary to what I was just saying? I do think yes. I do think that there is space for a pilot fleet. And I did post on Reddit. I don't think it was my own post. I think it was a comment, which will make it impossible to find because I've made tens of thousands of those over the years. But I did make a comment on the Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes subreddit maybe about 2.5 to 3 years ago. But so before GL Hondo was a twinkle in CG's eye, and just talking specifically about Hondo himself. And I had said that it may be an interesting design space if we were given Hondo's ship, which was a capital ship. However, because it is so small and it is not capital ship worthy, that the capital ship worked different to the other ships and instead was a fourth ship in the fleet that could reinforce just like any other ship. It could attack, it had speed, it did everything like a normal ship would do. It could be attacked, it could be destroyed. But it also functioned as a capital ship as well to kind of signal the whole pirate style of, your captain is the strongest of the team, but doesn't necessarily have a ship that is very much different than anyone else. I'm not saying that they are going to do that, but it does open up a different design space. I just don't believe that CG would be smart to release ships as its own era. And I do think that if we start to see more ships, it will be thematic ships to elevate the fleets that we already have in the game, in order to make them all usable. Right now, Home 1 is completely unusable once you have Profundity. Executrix and Chimera, you can only ever use one of those fleets at a time. And the same thing when it comes to Endurance and Negotiator, you're using one or the other. Now, CG can use the era system. Nobody ever said that those marquees have to be all characters or that they have to be all ships. CG can say, hey, we're doing a Galactic Republic era. We're going to give you these 4 new Galactic Republic characters plus 2 new Galactic Republic ships. And they can do that with every faction that is currently in the game. Or they could do a mixed bag era, which is really what I had hoped they would do in the next era, though I do think the Force Awakens is more likely. And a mixed bag era might say, hey, episode 1, we're going to give you a new character and a new ship. Episode 2, new character and new ship. Episode 3, new character, new ship, all for different aspects of the game. So, with all of that said, I I understand and I agree with Gerbil's logic. I get it. It makes sense. I don't think it makes sense from an economy standpoint. I don't think it makes sense from a makes money standpoint. I do think that characters predominantly make a lot more money, even if about 40% of our crystal income is locked to ships themselves. Now, what should they do with ships? I don't know. Where should they go with ships? I don't know. Should ships be removed from the game? I have heard that said quite a few times in the last couple of months, but it's not going to happen, guys. Like, I like to talk realistically. We're not removing ships from a game that has 60 some odd ships, and it is hard coded into our GAC TU and our fleet climbs. Um, what do you think they should do with fleets? I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments. And is this going to get passed around like a $10 whore? I have no idea. And I'm tired, guys. I hope not. Like, let's do something different. We could play Whose Line Is It Anyway, Star Wars edition. I don't know, but not this again. Please. Please no. Oh my God. With that said, it is 5 in the morning now. So I need to get ready for work. Peace out and have a great rest of your day.